She called me a gold digger during communion. Not after service. Not in the parking lot. Right there in God's house. While I was holding the tray of wine and bread. Her voice slicing through the choir like it had every right. He bought her a car before he bought me flowers. "What does that tell you?" she said. Loud enough for the pews behind us to lean in. I felt every eye land on me, like I'd stolen something, like I belonged outside. Not at the altar. No one corrected her, not even Evan. And that's when I knew she wasn't just trying to shame me. She was trying to erase me. But I don't disappear that easily. I knew I was in trouble the first time she smiled at me. Not the kind of smile you give someone you like. It was the kind that folds at the corners just enough to look polite from across the room, but up close. You feel the blade in it. That was Beverly, my future mother-in-law. And the moment I shook her hand, I felt like I'd stepped into an interview I didn't know I was failing. She asked me where I was from. I told her. A small town outside Toledo. She asked what I did. I said I was a case manager at a women's shelter. She nodded once, then looked at her son like he'd just told her he was dating a folding chair. That night, I cried in the car. Evan said she was just blunt, that she was still adjusting. Adjusting to what? That I wasn't rich, that I didn't come with a trust fund and tennis lessons. I should have turned around then. But love makes you think you can outlast anything, even a woman who's already decided you're temporary. The first dinner with her family was worse. I wore a thrifted blue dress, the kind that made me feel like I was trying. I brought her a pie I baked that morning, peach. Her favorite, Evan said. She looked at it and asked if I had remembered to wash my hands. Angela, Evan's sister-in-law, laughed behind her wine glass. She's just teasing, she said, but her eyes said otherwise. That whole night felt like one long test I wasn't meant to pass. Beverly quizzed me on politics. Asked about my credit score. Made a joke about food stamps. Evan just stared at his plate. Later, he apologized with flowers and soft words. Like he was patching drywall instead of a relationship. I told myself it was okay. That it was just tension. That she'd warm up. I didn't realize then I was the only one playing for peace. When we got engaged, she said nothing. No congratulations, no hug, just a phone call to Evan that ended with, "Don't come crying to me when she takes everything. Everything." As if I came with a net. When we got married, she wore white. She showed up with a half smile and a camera crew. Said it was for the family archive. But she kept pulling Evan aside, whispering in his ear, dragging him away from our guests. At one point, I caught her saying, "I'm just saying. Prenups exist for a reason." I stood on that rented lawn, champagne in hand, wondering if I'd just signed up for a war I couldn't win. But still I stayed. I went back to work 2 days after the honeymoon. Evan was looking for a job again. Said he needed time to figure out what he really wanted. I picked up extra hours, saved, budgeted. 2 years later, I had enough for a down payment on a modest little home in the suburbs. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Or at least, that's what I thought. The day we moved in, Beverly arrived without knocking, walked through the living room like she owned it, opened the fridge, criticized the backsplash, then turned to Evan and said, "So how much of this did she put in your name?" I was standing right there. She didn't ask me, didn't even look at me, just talked around me like I was drywall again. Evan didn't answer. He just stood there, frozen, like always. So I spoke for him. I bought the house. I said, I used my savings, my credit, my paperwork. I put it in my name to protect us both. She looked at me like I'd told her I killed someone. "You what?" "I put it in my name," I repeated, calmer this time, because I was the only one with income at the time. The room fell silent. Even the fridge humming felt accusatory. She left 5 minutes later without saying goodbye. I thought maybe we'd reached a new level of honesty. I thought maybe that would be the turning point. But Beverly doesn't retreat. She reloads. And the next time I saw her in front of 40 people, during communion, she decided to make her move. And that, my friend, was when everything truly began to fall apart. She waited until I was holding the communion tray to humiliate me. I hadn't even reached the second pew when her voice cut through the silence like a cracked whip. He bought her a car before he bought me flowers. What does that tell you? Heads turned, eyes followed, and I just stood there, red dress, heels sinking into the carpet. Frozen like I'd been caught stealing from the offering plate. No one said a word, not the pastor, not Evan, especially not Evan. He didn't even glance at me. The tray trembled in my hands. I forced my smile to stay in place as I moved down the aisle, pretending I hadn't just been reduced to a punchline in God's house. After service, Beverly handed out hugs like Halloween candy. She kissed the babies, complimented Mrs. Tate's casserole. She didn't even look in my direction. Angela sidled up to me in the parking lot. "Don't take it personally," she said. "You know how Beverly is." I almost laughed. "No," I said. "I really don't think I do." That night, I didn't speak at dinner. Evan didn't notice. He was talking about his new business idea. Another one. Some online import shop that needed just a little capital to get off the ground. I stared at the lasagna I made from scratch. It tasted like sawdust. When I finally did speak, my voice cracked from disuse. "Why didn't you say anything?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "At church, when she said what she said," he looked genuinely confused. "It wasn't that big of a deal. Grace, she was just being dramatic." That's when I realized to him, this was normal. He had spent so long letting her dictate the temperature of every room. He didn't even notice when she burned the walls down. Over the next few weeks, the gossip spread. Someone accidentally mentioned it at the women's group. A coworker at the shelter asked if I really lived off Evan's money. The cashier at the corner store asked me if I was the pretty one with the rich husband. Everywhere I turned, her voice echoed back at me through other mouths, other judgments. I stopped going to gatherings. I stopped picking up calls from his family. And I stopped letting Evan brush things under the rug. "You need to talk to her," I told him. "She's spreading lies." He sighed like I'd asked him to fix a leaky faucet. "Grace, this is how she is. It'll pass." "No," I said. "It won't. She's not just criticizing me anymore. She's attacking me. My name, my work." He looked away. "Maybe if you hadn't put the house in your name." I froze, and there it was. He didn't say it like an accusation, but it landed like one, like everything she did was somehow rooted in the fact that I protected us, protected me, from financial disaster. I went quiet again, but not because I was weak, because I was thinking. The next morning, I pulled out the paperwork, the deed, the notarized signatures, the emails, the transfers, all of it. I slid it into a folder, tucked it into my bag, and waited. It didn't take long. 3 days later, we were at Beverly's house for Angela's baby shower. Balloons, cupcakes, fake smiles everywhere. Beverly raised her glass to make a toast, and somehow, magically, it turned into a roast. "And here's to Angela," she said, "who didn't need to marry for money, who built a real home. Not just bought a house." A few people laughed nervously. One or two looked at me. I smiled. But inside, I was already planning the funeral for her reputation. I didn't say a word that day. I just waited until her friends were gathered, until the table was full, until the air was thick with judgment and sugar. Then I stood. "I just want to clarify something," I said, pulling the folder from my bag. "Since there seems to be confusion, I laid the deed down gently between the punch bowl and the presents. This house," I said, tapping the paper, "was purchased in full with my savings. My credit, my signature, Evan's too. But only after I did the work." Angela went pale. Beverly stiffened. Evan blinked like the sun had just come out. "Any questions?" I asked. No one said a word, but the room got very, very quiet. And Beverly? She didn't smile this time. She just reached for her drink like she needed something stronger than orange punch. But what came next? That was when things really got ugly. And this time, she wasn't content with words. She reported me to my job, anonymously said I was financially exploiting a vulnerable adult. No signature, no return address, just a printed letter with enough venom to code every word. The director pulled me into his office that Friday. His face was stiff. I have to ask, Grace, is there any truth to this? I looked at the copy of the letter. It didn't say Evan's name, but it didn't have to. She lured him in. It read, she used his mental health history to control him. She isolated him from his family, took over his finances, and now lives off him like a leech. It was a case file written by someone who didn't care about facts, only destruction. And suddenly, I was the one under review. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I left that office with my career dangling by a thread. When I told Evan, he just blinked. Are you sure it was her? I stared at him. You think it's a coincidence that 2 weeks after I show her the deed, someone reports me to work using your medical history? He didn't say no. He just walked away. The silence in our house grew teeth. He started sleeping in the spare room. Said he needed space to think. But he wasn't thinking. He was avoiding. Every time I passed him in the hallway, it felt like we were strangers renting disappointment from the same landlord. Beverly, meanwhile, doubled down. She started telling people I refused to let her visit the house. She told Evan's cousins I was hiding money. She showed up at our doorstep once and stood outside like a ghost for 20 minutes. Didn't knock, just stared. I called the police not to file a report, just to document it. You sure you want to go that far? The officer asked. No, I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Except this, I wasn't crazy. She wanted me gone, not just out of Evan's life, but wiped out. Like I never existed. And Evan, he was letting her do it. He didn't protect me, not when she humiliated me, not when she turned his family against me, not even when she tried to ruin my career. So I stopped waiting. I started keeping records. Every text, every email. I reached out to Lawrence, the lawyer who helped with the house. He reviewed everything, quietly, carefully. You've got enough to file for a protection order, he said. I nodded, but I wasn't ready yet. Not until she crossed the one line I never thought she'd touch. It started with a phone call from Angela. Of all people. I don't want to get involved, she said, but you should know. Beverly's been talking about Evan getting full ownership of the house. Said she's working on a way to challenge the paperwork. My hands went numb. Challenge what I asked. Angela hesitated. She said Evan wasn't in a sound state of mind when he signed, that you manipulated him, that maybe the signatures could be questioned. It wasn't just personal anymore. It was legal. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I booked an appointment with a different attorney that same day. I gathered every financial record, every signed consent form, every email Evan sent thanking me for saving our future. I printed the messages he sent bragging to friends about our new house, about the mortgage terms Grace negotiated like a pro. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to burn the blueprint she used to try and erase me. That night, Evan came home late. He smelled like whiskey and shame. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. She means well, he mumbled. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out sharp and tired and done. You think this is love? I said. What she's doing to me, what she's done to you, your whole life. He didn't answer, but his eyes said it all. He was broken, torn between two women who both claimed to love him, but only one of us ever fought for his freedom. You don't have to choose her or me, I said, but I already chose myself. I stood, walked out of the kitchen, and I didn't look back. But Beverly wasn't finished, not even close. She served me court papers on our wedding anniversary. Certified envelope. Quiet knock. No note. No warning. Just a petition claiming undue influence, emotional coercion, and mental manipulation. Filed by her. Signed by Evan. It took me 3 tries to read through it without shaking. She wanted the house. Said Evan never meant to put it in my name. Claimed he'd been pressured under emotional duress. Her affidavit read like a novel written in gasoline, desperate, reckless, ready to burn down anything to make a point. And Evan? He didn't deny signing it. Said he was confused. Said his mother convinced him it was just a formality. I looked him in the eye and didn't recognize a single piece of him. This was no longer about words. This was war. I went quiet, but I didn't go small. I hired my own lawyer, Nina Morales, a woman who looked like she'd eaten 6 Beverly types for breakfast. We reviewed everything: the mortgage, the wire transfers, the emails, the texts. I handed over a folder with color-coded tabs and timelines. Nina didn't say much. She just nodded slowly and said, "She picked the wrong one." The court date was set. It wasn't a trial, just a preliminary hearing. But it felt like I was walking into a coliseum, with lions on one side and Evan sitting quietly in the middle, pretending not to hear the growls. The courtroom was cold, sterile. Beverly wore black like someone had died. Maybe she thought it was me. She brought 2 cousins, a neighbor, even her old pastor people who hadn't seen Evan in years but were suddenly ready to swear he never wanted that house to be hers. My hands were steady. Nina went first, calm, precise, surgical. She walked the judge through the timeline of our relationship, the purchase agreement, the notarized deed, the email where Evan wrote grace. "I trust you with everything. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." We even had a statement from Lawrence, the notary, affirming Evan's mental clarity and voluntary consent. It wasn't just solid, it was bulletproof. When it was Beverly's turn, she stood and started crying before the clerk finished swearing her in. She called me a con artist, a social climber, said I'd alienated her son from his own blood, that I'd weaponized love. She spoke for 17 minutes. Not once did she mention Evan's recovery, or how I'd paid the first 6 months of his therapy out of pocket. Not once did she mention the years I'd worked double shifts so we could get out of her basement. She rewrote the past like she owned the pen. Then came Evan's turn. He stood, eyes down, hands trembling. He said he didn't know what to say. That's when the judge stopped him. "Do you believe you were coerced?" he asked. There was a long pause. And then Evan said the only honest thing I'd heard from him in months. "No," he whispered. "I wasn't." The courtroom held its breath. Beverly's head snapped toward him so fast, I thought her pearls might fly off. She didn't speak again. The judge dismissed the claim on the spot, said it was a clear abuse of process, and warned Beverly not to file further petitions without legal merit. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I walked out of that courtroom like I'd just buried something, because I had, on the sidewalk. Beverly rushed after me. "You think this is over?" she hissed. I turned slowly, looked her in the eye. "No," I said. "I think you're over." She didn't follow me after that, but the silence she left behind said more than any insult she'd ever thrown. "And Evan?" He followed me to the car. "I'm sorry," he said. I nodded. Then I opened the door, stepped inside, and shut it behind me without another word. Because some apologies don't buy back the house you tried to steal. And some homes, they don't have room for ghosts. She sent flowers to my house 2 weeks after the hearing with a card that read, "No hard feelings. Family is family." I left them on the porch until they rotted. Beverly's campaign didn't just collapse, it caved in on itself. The cousins stopped calling. The neighbors backed off. Even Angela, who once whispered behind wine glasses, sent a stilted apology over text. Didn't know it went that far. She wrote, "Hope you're okay." I didn't answer. I was tired of pretending people didn't know exactly what they were doing while they were doing it. Evan moved out the next month. He said it wasn't because of the house. Said he needed time to rebuild. I didn't argue. I didn't even cry. He packed his things into 3 boxes and left behind a shirt I never liked, and a kilt I refused to wear. I stayed, because I always did the building, The house became mine in more ways than paperwork. I repainted the kitchen. I tore out the old rug in the guest room, the one Beverly once said looked too modest. I filled the backyard with plants that bloomed in silence. It stopped being a battlefield. It became a garden. And then one night, out of nowhere, she knocked on my door. Beverly, no pearls, no heels, just gray hair pulled back tight, and a cardigan like she'd borrowed someone else's skin. Her eyes were smaller than I remembered. Or maybe they were just emptier. "I had a fall," she said. "They won't release me unless someone picks me up." I stared at her. She looked past me. Into the living room she once said lacked character. I called Evan. He said he couldn't come, said he was out of town. Silence stretched between us. She cleared her throat. I thought maybe she didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I let her stand there for 20 more seconds. Long enough to feel what I'd felt for years. Then I said, "I'm not the woman you think I am." She blinked. "What? I'm not the weak one. Not the one who needs permission. Not the one you get to use when it's convenient." Her lips tightened. "Grace, you lied." I cut in. About me. About Evan. About everything. And you smiled through it like it was church brunch. She looked away. I lowered my voice. "I'm not cruel, Beverly, but I don't owe you kindness anymore." She didn't argue. She just nodded, then turned and walked down the steps. Slower than when she'd come. And I let her go. Not with malice, with finality. A few months later, I accepted a new job offer, lead director at a nonprofit that helps women escape toxic family dynamics. I moved 3 states away. I left no forwarding address. Some nights, when the air is still, I sit on the porch and wonder if she ever tells the story differently, if she frames herself as misunderstood, if she convinces herself that I was cruel for walking away. Maybe, but I didn't walk away to hurt her. I walked away because I'd spent too many years trying to earn my place in rooms I paid for with everything but dignity. I don't live like that anymore. And Evan, he called me once, said he was proud of me. I told him that was nice. Then I hung up. Because pride is easy when you're not the one who had to fight for air. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who smile while doing it and call it love. This story wasn't just about a house. It was about dignity. About fighting for your name when someone tries to stain it. About realizing that silence doesn't always mean peace, and speaking up doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. Grace's story is one so many carry in silence. Being judged unfairly, being erased in plain sight, being told to keep the peace when you're the only one bleeding. But she didn't stay small. She didn't stay silent. And in the end, she didn't burn bridges, she just stopped handing out the wood. If you've ever had to walk away from family to protect yourself, if you've ever been made the villain just for setting boundaries, then I hope this story reminded you you're not alone, and you're not wrong. If this spoke to your heart, consider giving it a like, sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, or subscribing for more true-to-life stories just like this one. We've got more to tell, more healing to do, and I'd love for you to walk with me through it. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.